They leave their cars running. So they
Wow.
are pulling up to the dumpster. They're popping open the lid. They're looking inside. If they see something good, they'll pull it out. And if they don't, they are back in the car and they move on.
I'm Rosie Guerin, and you're listening to The Wirecutter Show. Hey, it's Rosie. My guest today is Annemarie Conte. She's a deputy editor and my colleague here at Wirecutter. Annemarie just wrote a piece all about something I think probably most people wouldn't consider doing, but that some folks do for a living: dumpster diving. The article is called "Why Do Stores Throw Away So Many Perfectly Good Products?" I went dumpster diving to find out. The piece is a continuation of Annemarie's reporting on waste in consumer goods. At the end of last year, she wrote a very popular article all about how she bought a nearly 500-pound mystery pallet of returned items from Amazon. Then she investigated what was inside, all in an effort to better understand the impact of returns at a large scale. It turns out a lot of those goods end up being resold on the secondary market for pennies on the dollar, also known as liquidation. The dumpster diving story is asking a similar question. What happens to unwanted items that have been on store shelves, but this time they end up in the trash? Annemarie flew to Texas, walked the streets of New York to investigate how much is being thrown away, whether the, quote, trash is actually trash, and why it isn't being sold, recycled, or donated at scale. We're going to get into it after the break and hear all about what Annemarie found in the dumpsters. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today, my guest is Wirecutter's deputy editor, Annemarie Conte. Annemarie, welcome back. Hello.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here with my favorite people at Wirecutter. Don't tell anyone.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for a variety of reasons. First, because I really love getting to hear about all of your adventures, but also because you and I, we talked about how this article is in some ways, or it feels like a continuation of the conversation you and I had back in January about your piece titled, "We Bought a 450-Pound Mystery Pallet Packed with Return Goods from Amazon and Beyond. Here's what we found inside." That was a banger.
It was so fun.
That was a banger.
It was so fun. And the audience, really reacted very positively to it. And it was something that I think surprised so many people and surprised me as I was reporting it.
If folks didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, it's worth checking out. Obviously worth reading your piece as well. I want to know what you see as the connective tissue between that story and this story.
Both things are hidden from most people. I think that a lot of people, when they're going about their day and they're shopping and they're returning something, they don't think about what happens to it after it leaves their hands. And they don't think about the stuff that's on the store shelves, what happens to it if it doesn't get sold. And so both of those topics are ways to explore this secondary market. What happens to the goods after they sort of leave your sight is something that I'm fascinated by.
This idea of the secondary market being the great beyond for products.
One of my sources called it the Wild West. And I think that's also something, as a journalist, that's really interesting to me. How is this relatively unregulated, unmodulated, constantly evolving product handling, logistics piece, how does it exist? What is happening now? And how does it affect our readers and our planet and our wallets?
Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of that. All right, so walk me through this reporting. What did you do and why?
I started by shadowing dumpster diver influencers. So these are people who are on the internet every day. They're posting to social media, and they are showcasing exactly what they're finding in these dumpsters. Apparently, Dallas-Fort Worth is a hotbed of dumpster diving influencer culture, and there are several people out there who are friends and have gotten to know each other. And so I flew out to the Dallas-Fort Worth area and shadowed 2 dumpster divers there. And then I also wanted to understand what it was like in New York City, because that's an entirely different animal. So I also shadowed, she calls herself the trash walker, because New York does not have dumpsters in the same way that the strip mall heaven that is Dallas-Fort Worth. And so those were 2 very different experiences for me. And then I took the products that we found and we did environmental life cycle assessments of them. We tried to understand if they actually had resale value. And then I tried to dig into why these companies were continuing to throw away products despite the fact that these influencers are shaming them on a daily basis and saying, look at everything we found, look at all of this stuff, and why this practice continues. And there have been cases where companies have responded and said, okay, we are not going to do this anymore. You're right. And there are others that, we reached out to every company that I mentioned in the article, and most of them sort of just had a very generic statement about how they support the environment. And so I think that that's really interesting to me, too, about the reactions of these companies and the companies that are trying to control the waste, and others that sort of just assume that it's part of their business model and continue on.
So what did you do? Were you really legs flailing in the air, head down in a dumpster? What did you do? What did you find out?
It turns out I don't have the upper body strength for that, number one. But our legal team was very careful to, as a journalist, I can experience these things. I can witness these things. I did not. The things that we took out of the dumpster do not belong to me and do not belong to Wirecutter. Those were things that were found by the people that I was shadowing, and those items go back to them.
Okay.
So that was something that was very important to us. In the course of my reporting, I was witnessing this. Yes, sometimes I did try to get a closer look, and I was in a little bit, but for me to interact with those products, it was very much something that belonged to the 3 women that I was following. And do you want to hear a little bit about the legality of dumpster diving? Are you interested in this?
I am, if only because
Yeah.
it seems like it potentially could be a little bit gray, a little shady.
It is gray. But in general, unless there's a specific ordinance against it, so there are certain municipalities or towns that say that you may not remove trash from a waste bin. If you are not walking past a no trespassing sign, or you are not cutting a lock or going through something that is locked, then it's pretty permissible, because it no longer belongs to the person who has thrown it in the dumpster. And it might technically belong to the waste management company, but even that's a bit of a gray area. And so in general, it's not illegal. And in the places where it is illegal, potentially there's a fine connected to it. And as a journalist, I can actually witness something that is illegal.
You just can't participate.
I just can't participate in it. But in this case, it was all sort of above board. We didn't do anything that was illegal.
Talk a little bit about the folks you worked with, the folks that you shadowed. You mentioned the trash walker. I know the trash walker was in New York.
Yes.
What about the folks in Texas?
So the 2 women in Texas who I followed are Tiffany Roach, and she goes by Dumpster Diving Mama, and Ella Rose, and she goes by Glamour D-Dive. Both of them have been dumpster diving for 9 years, like almost a decade. And they met each other just by crossing paths on the circuit,
Wow.
They kind of have their own territories. Dallas-Fort Worth is very widespread. And so they generally operate in separate circles, and then sometimes we'll cross paths. So I didn't realize that all 3 of these dumpster divers were fully connected until I was thinking about the story of these Coach bags in 2021. So Ella Rose, Glamour D-Dive, found a stash of slashed Coach bags behind a Coach outlet. So these are leather bags. These are the bags that have the classic canvas Coach logoing, and they have literally been cut through by an employee so that they can't be usable anymore.
Wow.
The zippers are broken. It was over a dozen bags and shoes.
Ostensibly in otherwise fine shape.
Yes, right. And often that's what happens. Something will have a smudge on it or might have like a little bit of a tear, and that's when they get tossed. So Glamour D-Dive found a stash, and then the next day, I believe, Tiffany Roach, who goes by Dumpster Diving Mama, she found a stash. And so Tiffany posted this video where she was like, I can't believe this. This is crazy. Anna Sachs, the trash walker, saw that video over in New York and said, I will buy all of these destroyed Coach bags. And so she did. Tiffany sent them to her. And Anna is the one who posted a video that went viral and caused Coach to say, okay, the official statement was, we will no longer do this practice, which is, to be fully clear, so many companies do this. This is not an anomaly. Coach was not alone in this. But Coach was the one that said, we're not going to do this anymore, and we are going to cycle this into our circularity program. So if somebody returns a bag that Coach deems unsellable for whatever reason, it can get remade or it can get refurbished and resold so that it doesn't end up in the dumpster.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that to me was a really interesting tale, and it really connected all three of the divers who I was following.
So you go to Texas with Aubrey from our video team. We love Aubrey. What is a typical day in this reporting trip? What are you doing when you wake up? What are you seeing? What are you smelling? How do you meet Tiffany and Ella? Paint me a picture.
I think Aubrey and I were both initially very surprised at how quick this process is. Aubrey and I were in our rental car. We were following Tiffany in her car. Ella had a separate car because they often don't dumpster dive together for the sake of the story and to really show me around. They had crossed their territories for our sake. Dumpster diving is competitive, and not everybody's an influencer, right? So we had this woman that was like 5 steps ahead of us. And so twice, she got there first. It's her claim. We saw her pulling the bags out, and then she was gone. And it was like, well, that was the stuff that we wanted. But it was so fast moving. Like, Aubrey could barely get her camera out by the time we got out of the car. They leave their cars running. So
Wow.
They are pulling up to the dumpster. They're popping open the lid. They're looking inside. If they see something good, they'll pull it out. And if they don't, they are back in the car and they move on. And they know internally in their heads exactly which dumpsters they're going to go to. And so they'll say, oh, yeah, maybe we'll go to this shopping complex next, or maybe we haven't hit this place. And the thing that really I didn't understand until I experienced it is they could be checking the same dumpster multiple times a day. You never know when an employee is going to throw out some trash. And they have notes that they keep where they say, okay, I think this day is trash day. So there were a few times where the trash had already been picked up. And so we missed it. We missed it by minutes. And there was both Tiffany and Ella's husbands will look for them as well. So what happened on one of the days is Ella's husband said he was driving to work and he said, I think the TJ Maxx dumpster is full. And she grabbed a couple bags for us. So we didn't physically see her pull those bags from the trash, but she showed up with them in her trunk and we were able to go through them. And so that to me it was like very much like a team effort. It feels really exciting. There's like the highs are high and the lows are low, and you're checking the dumpster and then you're moving on and you're driving around and it was very fast paced. And New York, in contrast, was slow because New York doesn't have dumpsters. They put all of their trash at store closing. So the store closes at 8 or 9 p.m., and then the employees will put the trash on the curb. And we walked from spot to spot because it's not really easy to drive around in the city. And so that was slower, dirtier. The trash was much more mixed in. I think the thing that people do not understand is dumpsters are surprisingly clean. The dumpster.
How? How?
It shocked me too. There's no food waste in there, or there's minimal food waste. The dumpsters that are behind malls and strip malls are dedicated to the store. So if you have a store, like, you're not going to go through the Five Guys dumpster. That is a crazy idea because that's going to be filled with food waste.
Right.
But the TJ Maxx dumpster, the Marshall's dumpster, the dollar store dumpster, those are going to be filled with mostly packaging, styrofoam, plastic, that kind of thing, sometimes display units, and sometimes product waste.
And in contrast, New York is not like that.
I was so naive. Like, I was not prepared for the mixed trash, the smells. People just throw their food waste in with everything else. And it's like so many Dunkin' cups, like 1 million Dunkin' cups. That was a bit of a rude awakening for me, and also so important for me to have experienced both aspects of this. I'm so glad that I did that second trash walk so that I did not make assumptions about what it's like everywhere.
What'd you pull out?
Oh my goodness. It's a lot of tchotch. It's a lot of tchotchke. But there was stuff like apparel, children's toys, a soccer ball, a dog bed that had a slash through the bottom. So the bottom of the bed, the fabric on the bottom was cut through. And the suspicion is that sometimes the employees are being told to destroy things, but they'll just destroy it a little bit, right, in hopes that it can be reclaimed. We don't know that firsthand, but I think it is really hard on these retail employees to be smashing mugs and picture frames and things that really could be used again. Ella had found, just before we got there, she found a Coach hat and scarf, new in box. She found a silver necklace and a gold-plated necklace, just all sorts of stuff, all sorts of really interesting stuff. And what's interesting is that we did the life cycle assessments.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so sustainability experts will do these estimates to try to understand the impact of producing these products and shipping these products and the whole life cycle of these products, how long they are used for, all of that. So I worked with a company called Earthster, and they use AI to create these assessments for businesses. So their intention is to help a business reduce their footprint. They were trying to help us understand what it took to get these products produced and brought to the U.S. in most cases and put on the store shelves just for it to get thrown out. To me, that is wild. So the necklace, which was the lightest object, the smallest object, involved metal mining. It involved air freight because it's a light, small item. So it likely wasn't shipped. It was likely flown. And that just has a huge carbon footprint and a big impact on the environment. So our lightest object also had one of our largest carbon footprints. And for it to just get thrown out and not be able to be used, anyone would love to have this little heart-shaped necklace.
Absolutely.
Delightful.
Yeah. What was the ickiest, strangest, bizarrest thing you found in the dumpster?
I know I just spent a long time telling you how clean the dumpsters were in Texas, and they were for a large part. However, there is something called souping. It seems to happen with the beauty chain Ulta. They will take product testers, returned goods, anything that they're trying to get rid of, will go into a trash bag, and then they cover it in liquid, water, foundation, and it creates disgusting soup. And so we put on our rubber gloves and went through it, and they will reclaim some of that stuff. They will clean it. There are sometimes beauty products that are still sealed and in packaging, and so they will take it and they will clean it and make use of it. But that was definitely, I think, the grossest. And we also found soup products in New York as well, so behind an Ulta as well. They had also cut the cords of hair tools. And I tried to understand. I contacted the hair tool company to say, why is this happening? Is this something that you're dictating, or is this something that Ulta is doing on their own? And they basically referred me back to Ulta, and Ulta did not respond to our request for comment. So that to me is fascinating. And Tiffany's husband will actually repair the cords on the cut tools, and they will clean it up and they will resell them, which that's going to void the warranty. And if you try to do it yourself and you don't know about electrical, maybe not the best idea, but it's something that she does.
Is it soup on the outside and in the inside of these bags?
The bag is clean on the outside. So you're pulling a clean bag that is filled with liquid and grossness.
I get the impression that the chance of finding these huge hauls where you're going to a dumpster and you're finding tons of valuable, resellable items is fairly low. Number one, is that fair to say? And number two, if that's true, what reasons are Tiffany and Ella giving you for doing this?
It's not low. It just takes work. So I got a peek into Ella's storage units, and they were full of stuff that she's reselling. Just to see it in accumulation is really astounding. So you may find a few things a day. You may find a couple of bags of things today. But then when you have enough, they'll sell it on Facebook Marketplace. Tiffany has a garage sale a few times a year. She'll sell these items about 75% off. So first of all, they make a living off of this, right?
This is their full-time job?
This is their full-time job. So they not only make money from the views on social media, but they also make money from selling the products. And they really do feel passionately that they want to illuminate this waste that is happening.
I want to hear some more specifics about what you found in these dumpsters. And I also want to hear about how retailers are thinking about or not thinking about the issue of retail waste. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. My guest today is my colleague, a deputy editor here at Wirecutter, Annemarie Conte, and we have been talking about Annemarie's recent trip through the dumpsters, fair to say?
A deep dive, as they say.
Deep dive. One of the first things you wrote in this piece was how much you enjoyed the process of dumpster diving and that it was, quote, addictive. So I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how that can be the case.
I didn't understand it until I experienced it. I mean, the bottom line is it's like free stuff. And there is definitely the dopamine hit that comes with getting free stuff and the fall when you don't see anything. But it's basically like a giant claw machine, right? Like you're popping it open if you see something, especially if something is out of reach, and then you grab your grabber tool and you take it and then you throw it in your car and you get out of there and the idea of rescuing something that otherwise would have ended up gone forever is really addictive. But I'm not going to force you to dumpster dive.
Don't make me go. For me, I think the most powerful sentence in your article is this, quote, "Waste is not a byproduct of manufacturing and retail. It's part of the business model." Can you tell me what you meant by that?
As much as companies say that they are trying to think about the end of life of their products, the idea that there will be loss of product, whether it is because it gets broken accidentally or because they are destroying it themselves, is part of most companies' corporate model. That, to me, is the really sad part of this. Most companies, I don't want to paint all companies with a broad brush.
Sure.
There are plenty of companies that are trying their best here. And there are a lot of sustainability teams in these large corporations who are trying to create change. But at the end of the day, this is the system that they're working in. It is cheaper to throw out some of this stuff than to find a place for it to go.
And you could quibble about the word cheaper.
Right.
Fiscally,
Yeah.
ethically, sustainability-wise, there are, yeah.
That's what I wanted to explore in this piece is really what is the cost?
Right.
What is the environmental cost? What is the financial cost of these items and everything that goes into them for them to never get used and just get thrown out.
So, a product you might find in a dumpster, it could be damaged in some way
Mhm.
and deemed unsellable. It could have been defective in some way and deemed unsellable. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are perfectly fine, good items that are actually just overstock.
Often overstock, like what I found with the pallet, when we were in that liquidation warehouse, we saw an entire pallet full of new in box Lego from Target. And that was overstock. That was liquidated and sold for pennies on the dollar and ended up in that warehouse for a reseller to purchase and resell. But if there's one damaged Lego box, there isn't quite a flow for it. So that might end up in the dumpster. Not too long ago, one of our dumpster divers found a bunch of Lego that was wet. There was like writing on the side that said flood. So the boxes got wet and they're not going to liquidate that. So they threw it in the trash and she found it and resold it.
Let's speak about the overstock for a second. Why is there so much overproduction happening?
What I was told by one of my sources is that the opportunity cost of overproducing is more important than the potential loss by underproducing. So companies don't want to end up sold out because then they have lost potential sales. So they're going to overproduce by a margin in order to ensure that they have enough. And I think if you want to be a little less nefarious about it, like a lot of these companies are producing things a year in advance. They don't know what the response will
Sure.
be to these items. So sometimes they miss the mark, they overproduce, and sometimes they underproduce. And their goal is probably to hit the correct number, but they would rather go over than under.
When I think about this process of doing the life cycle assessment, my brain immediately went to Pixar movie. Like, what is this little piece of an I love you, mom mug that ended up in a dumpster in Fort Worth? What is the process from ideation all the way to it ending up in a landfill somewhere? The reality is you can't chart that entire process. Is that true?
Only the companies themselves can chart that. And even that with getting materials and I think the thing that people really don't understand is how many different parts there are of this process to get the materials, to get the production, to get all of that together. It's so many different small decisions and steps. I would love to watch that movie. I would probably sob as hard as I did at Toy Story.
It would be sad.
It would be sad, but that's really something that only the brands and manufacturers know.
What infrastructure is in place for actual proper recycling of unwanted or unsellable goods? And why is this not lucrative big business?
Yeah. Part of it is that you can't recycle items that often have mixed materials. With clothing recycling, it's a growing business. People are trying to create technology and infrastructure to help support textile recycling. But ultimately, this is a story of overproduction, and we can't recycle our way out of this.
What infrastructure is in place in terms of donation, or is that also kind of a Wild West one-off
Yeah.
situation?
Some donation is very effective. I think it's also fairly common that these secondary sellers are overwhelmed. And so they are often throwing out product too. Anna Sachs in New York told me that some of her best finds come from thrift store garbage.
Wow.
So it just always comes back to an overproduction problem.
Okay, so it's not financially worth it for the companies to recycle or donate unwanted or unsellable items.
all the time. So, right? So they do this to some extent, and I don't want to give the impression that they don't, but there's still excess, even despite efforts to donate or recycle if they are, there's still excess.
And it takes a lot of effort to dive into these dumpsters, finding, then reselling, or occasionally repairing these items. This problem of waste continues to grow year over year. Products are increasingly expensive to produce. Why aren't you in a ball sobbing?
It's so interesting because when I reported the pallet story in November, I was in a ball. With this, what I actually found was hope. And I think that there are a lot of different ways, from the dumpster divers who are doing this in their communities on a very small scale, to companies that are attempting to make these efforts to create circularity. That's when you don't have excess in the manufacturing process and you're taking scrap material and you are cycling it back into your products. A really good example is Coach. So they are using leather scrap from their manufacturing process to create new bags. They have a program called Reloved, where they take bags that are bought back by them and they will refurbish them or they will redesign them. And then they have a second line called Coachtopia, which is where they take these leather scraps and they create bags out of those. So there are efforts being made by some companies to create a closed system so that there isn't excess waste. And I think there are people that are doing things like that all over. And the EU just created a law. So it's not happening in the US, but the European Union is making efforts to, one, inventory how much excess product these companies have. So this is focused on medium and large companies, and to create an end-of-life plan for these products. So they're not allowed to just ship them out to another country and dump them. They need to figure out how to create more circularity in their processes so that we are not creating mountains of waste.
I know, Annemarie, that you're careful about not implying that the problem of waste is a problem for individuals to solve. I do wonder, though, what do you think we can be doing, or what can we be mindful of when buying, returning, or disposing of the stuff in our lives?
I think about that checkout gauntlet that a lot of stores have, which is basically like your impulse purchase hellscape.
Oh, I'm weak.
I think that it is just trying to be more mindful of what you're purchasing and when. I do a lot of thrift shopping. I also have realized that there are more of these buyback programs or repair programs. I just dropped 3 pieces of clothing at Patagonia for repair for free, one of which I thrifted. I thrifted a jacket. The zipper broke. They repaired it on the spot. They put a new zipper in that jacket for me, and I walked out with essentially like a completely usable jacket.
Incredible.
And then there were 2 other items that they sent out for repair. Just getting more longevity out of those items. And then, I'm not going to tell you not to buy things that delight you, but just be a little bit more careful about what you are bringing into your home and what you are purchasing, and not thinking about items as disposable, because at the end of the day, everything ends up in the trash. Reduce, reuse, recycle is an order of operations, right? Don't buy in excess. Reuse what you can, either your own goods or by purchasing previously loved things, and then recycling if and when you can.
So are you on Trash Beat? Is this your job now?
I would really like my next story to be about puppies or candy or...
Sure. Thanks for joining me, Annemarie. This is always so fun. If you want to see Annemarie on her quests diving in these dumpsters, there's a ton of video, amazing images and graphics on our website. The piece is called Why Do Stores Throw Away So Many Perfectly Good Products? I went dumpster diving to find out. And we'll link the story in our show notes. That's it for us. We'll see you next week. Peace. The Wirecutter Show is executive produced by me, Rosie Guerin, and produced by Abigail Keel. Engineering support from Maddie Mazziello and Nick Pittman. Today's episode was mixed by Catherine Anderson. Original music by Dan Powell, Marian Lozano, Alicia Etup, Rowan Nemisto, Catherine Anderson, and Diane Wong. Cliff Levy is Wirecutter's deputy publisher and general manager. Ben Fruman is Wirecutter's editor-in-chief. And I'm Rosie Guerin. Thank you for listening. Should we just dive in? Dive in.